Hello.
Awesome. Well, hello. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for coming in. Appreciate this one. Just kind of wanted to give a brief thanks to the staff and gratitude. What you have seen before you is you got a couple of large documents. One of them is a PowerPoint presentation. I gave you a read ahead on Friday. This is the final document, and we'll have a couple of various speakers coming up. This is truly an informal discussion, really. Like, I don't think the majority of you will catch things or learn things that you don't already aware of. Maybe there'll be some nuggets. Really, the intent of this is an informal discussion, presentation to the new commissioner, and I'd like to, this will become these slides, and this process will be part of the onboarding process for the new city manager. Evan and I are looking forward. We'll make sure this is updated, and this will be departmental briefings for them. As you can see, the book in front of you, I want to thank Ann for putting this together. There was a lot of printing, a lot of punching, and a lot of stapling to make sure that this is done. As you can see, we'll have a couple of references, and the slides correlate roughly with the sections of this larger book. We've got the city charter, an updated organizational chart, current budget. We got your contact information, boards, commissions, committee listings with some FOIA ethics, and also a section from ICMA, General Information Ethics, and the Council Manager form of government. The intent of this book really is to provide you a one-stop shop for all the key documents and update that one as needed. So Ann, over time, will give you updated copies, put it in your box for either replacement or addition into this particular book. One element that was already added, and that was section number 14. Evan brought that back from the DFIT meeting, just last week. The Delia Founders Insurance Trust. This is our self-insured workers' compensation program. That is a handout and series for information for your benefit. So if you want to know what that is, it's on tab number 14. So first and foremost, thanks to the staff for bringing me here. Appreciate it. Again, this is the first one we've done, but I don't think this will be the last. Hopefully, this won't be the last one that gets presented to the mayor and commissioners as we move forward. 4 main briefers. I'll take the first a couple of minutes just for introductions, go through a couple of slide decks, portions of it, and then I'll turn it over to Chief Banks, who have several slides to brief, then turn it over to Kevin Williams for several slides to brief. Finalize with, for the city staff, Bert Dukes will talk about some financial stuff in the finance department, and then we'll transition, kind of pivot a little bit to ethics and FOIA, and then we'll kind of pause for whatever discussion points you'll want to have. There is every city department minus the bandstand in here, but for the sake of time, I want to keep to that 90-minute time frame, and I want to respect your time because I know you have things to do after this one. We'll try to keep to that 90 minutes. If you want to have a specific deeper dive to any particular department, please reach out. Evan and I will kind of get that scheduled, and we'll answer those questions as you see fit and whenever you want to. Here's the agenda for today. We'll talk about from the welcome. Next slide, we'll have that post-election cycle process, roles, responsibilities, some overview of the city staff, the organizational chart, and some of those key changes. Departmental overview, and that's where you'll get from the key briefers today. And then we'll turn it over to our associate for Alex. I'm trying to remember the name of the law firm here. Brockstead, sorry, Mandelis. My apologies. And then we'll go ethics and any questions. Are there any questions to start off with? Oh, okay. We'll jump right into that one. Based off of the interactions and conversations we had with most of you, we really wanted to put together what the election and post-election process is going to be. And this is for your consideration and revision as you see it fit. Obviously, the election process were followed by a quick, brief orientation and training for the newly elected official. Really, this is what Commissioner and Preston and I did just last week. Got them around. We showed introduction to the key departments, key areas within the city. really kind of get him to understand some of those meet and greet. And this is different than what we're doing today, which is a little more of an in-depth briefing. We have a swearing-in ceremony, obviously was accomplished last week, and then that formal commissioner orientation training. This one really is focused on when we talk about the ethics, Alex will talk about any conflicts of interest and discussion points that may be more relevant to Commissioner Preston or you all if you have any of those questions. Organizational structure, questions, things of that nature. And then moving into the next piece, which is we're in the process of getting that scheduled. Tentatively, we have that vision and priorities scheduling on October 24th. I'm in communications with UDEL. We believe we have a nice facilitator that might be on track to help facilitate that particular element. Public involvement and input on this one. I think in order for us to make sure that we keep the transparency with the public, whatever that vision and priority is that you kind of have outlined at that visioning and priority session, we take back and present that deliverables to the public at the next public meeting. And I think that will really show that the residents and the public constituents what you have in mind moving forward. For the mayor's formation of committees and assignments, as that whole process that you have delineated, we've incorporated that into this process. And we talked about the development of strategic goals. And with most of you, we've talked about specifically how does that incorporate a strategic plan? And I think really that's a good dialogue to have as we move forward. What is that strategic plan? Do it align those strategic goals? In my last community, I usually use that one as the connective tissue. You have that comprehensive development plan really at the 20, 30,000 foot level, and you have your budget and your comprehensive, your capital improvements plan, but there's no connective tissue to tie those two elements together, and really that's what a strategic plan and strategic goals really help to facilitate. And an implementation of policies and initiatives, and then reporting and evaluation back to the constituents. So that's that whole process for your consideration. If you want to see any changes or any modifications to this particular process, please let Evan and myself know as we make any final adjustments. Roles and responsibility. Looking at the charter, and really wanted to provide this 30 seconds overview at the high level. City charter really identifies what the power conferred is, and it really kind of focuses on three major elements: powers of the mayor, powers of the commissioners, and powers of the city manager. And really what's not powers, it's duties and responsibilities. What are those key components of? And as you have already read, they're clearly distinct between all three of those elements because we do fall under that council manager form of government. That particular definition is pulled directly from the ICMA, International City County Management Association. And on tab 2 of your book in front of you, it has an updated, very large pull-out sheet of the updated organizational chart. If you'll indulge me for just a couple of seconds, we got some highlights that I wanted to have changes here. As you can see, we were in the process of advertising for that Deputy Director of Public Works. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is do that succession planning in place that when we initially did my interview process, you really wanted to focus on. And I think that will adhere to that task. We bring on that individual and have the Director of Public Works train them for the next several months and clearly articulate that succession plan and provide that knowledge to the successor. One area we have not reached right now is the part-time communications assistant for communications manager Lynn. I really think that will help with the duties and responsibilities and the growth of that particular department. Reach Out Rehoboth, new website, continued advancement of the various social media platforms, communications with both residents and the press. I think we're primed to move forward on that particular hiring action. So that's one of the ones that I think Evan, and if in your indulgence, you want to continue on. Continue toward the right, we are poised to make an offer to a candidate for the Director of Planning and Community Development. That individual will really kind of help shape the path for building and licensing moving forward for the next several years. The workflow, systems, processes that are currently in process right now with one of the consultants that will help building and licensing with applications, permits. I think that is really setting the stage for future success. And I think this individual will help bring that to fruition in the coming years. One of the areas that we have not hired, and I would ask the board to really contemplate over the coming years, or even the coming months, is a planning position. Right now, we use Wallace Montgomery. They're a great firm, but they're also a consultant. They're an outside firm. And the response with them is not as clear and concise, nor is it as rapid as we would with a on-site planner. We've done preliminary estimates, and roughly we would be about the same, if not doing better, bringing a planner on board. So as far as cost expenditures. We've already brought the second code enforcement on staff. So I think that individual, Scott Cantalupo, we'll get a chance to meet him. You'll see him out and about in the city. Really kind of help with understanding where we're going to go for code enforcement and bring that area with some emphasis on it. Other than that one, there were some minor modifications within Streets Department. There were some seasonals. And then one small realignment where we put the technical services directly under the Streets Department. There was a mutual relationship between technical services and parking and Streets Department. They are technically housed down in the Public Works Yard and work side by side with the Streets Department, but fall under the parking, really, because those are the ones that are dealing with signs, painting, the machines out there for the Park Mobile. So there is a mutual connection back to parking, but I think the emphasis really needs to be under resourcing under the Streets Department. So we made that change not too long ago, and I think that will really be very beneficial, and that technical services understands during the parking season, that's their main effort, and they understand that very clearly. So I think this would be moving forward, it'll be very good for the whole departments. So other than that, if there are any questions other than the org chart, please, any questions, jump on those real while you have them fresh.
Where was tech services previously? Is that?
It was under parking. Yeah, and a lot of times the tech services will have other people from streets help them out on occasion, and they're with them being housed down there. That tied in with the two department heads, obviously Kevin and June, they'll stay tied in forever to make sure that those emphasis stays on tech services for parking and preparation. So, any other questions? Mm-hmm.
IT, are all the servers that serve the building? Yeah, all the servers that serve the building, are they housed here, or do we have any off-site storage or any that kind of thing?
You want
It's a mix. I would say that we're probably about 80% on-site, and then we also have several software as a service type scenarios where they're hosted elsewhere, and we are just tapping into them.
Okay, so, and you operate those remotely? Is that how?
That's correct.
Yeah,
So we have support through the vendors and on their platform, but we also have management responsibilities and have capabilities to create efficiencies with those systems.
Okay. And I don't want to get too in the weeds, but like, how often do you sort of evaluate the strength of our firewalls and that sort of thing?
Regularly. So once again, we're constantly evolving, putting equipment in place, replacing equipment. We have a life cycle management system for devices. So we're looking at these constantly.
Okay, thank you.
So, and again, just to reiterate, a copy of this book will be in the city manager's office and will be updated regularly to make sure that, when there's an update with Ann or the staff, we get that updated and get those updates to you as well. Mm-hmm. And with that, I'll turn it over first to Chief Banks, and then we'll go right into succession to Kevin Williams, with Bert, and then finally with Alex. So. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, and the public that's here with us today, and fellow staff members. I'm going to try to go fast. I was advised I have about 5 minutes, so I threw a lot of information out to you on these slides. So the first part is Rehoboth Beach Patrol. What you need to know is everything is running smoothly there with Captain Giles. He actually, we have full staff. We're moving forward with that. He's put in a lot of great initiatives that I've put out on your slide. Junior lifeguard program is strong. The beach wheelchairs is very strong, and we host several competitions each year and doing well on that. We do have a future project. Obviously, you know about the new beach patrol facility. We're going to look at in the budget carport to house the jet ski we got this year that was very successful, and a second beach ambassador that the city manager has talked about previously this year as myself at other events, that somebody's going around being a true ambassador for us on the beach and making sure people are in compliance. And then maybe a vehicle transportation to take equipment and to use at competitions and recruitments that we're going to be looking at in future budgets. The biggest challenges for the lifeguards, just like with the police department that I'll talk about soon, is the workforce housing. And second week of August, students that are in college return back to school. So that's something that happens every year that is kind of out of control, but it makes it very difficult. I will say our budget, we're on budget for this year. Nothing jumped out at us. Everything's well on that. Is there any questions on the lifeguards? That's real quick. There's a lot of information out there, but again, I have limited time.
I don't know whether this question's more appropriate during the budget cycle or something. It's just a comment. You know, you say we have one beach ambassador. I recently learned that Bethany Beach either has 4 or 6 or something, but much greater numbers so that they have a much smaller area. Do you want comments like that, or?
Yes,
So-
most definitely. It's like, did they say what the duties and responsibilities of those ambassadors are, Mayor?
No, but I need to check into that because it came up in conversation about keeping an eye on the tents and canopies and everything, yeah. So, but I'll clarify that for the budget because I would like to see that we consider more ambassadors for
Can you
the
talk
same
about the numbers
reason.
of tents?
Thank you.
And then what the change was for the years. I know it was like 2,000, 2,500 versus 3,000 or 4,000 the previous years.
Yeah, it looks like for the tents, we had 2,487 tent takedowns for the beach ambassador this year. Yeah, we had another over 1,200. I don't have those numbers right in front of me for the police officers sit there. That is a little bit down, even though it was more tents this year. It's just because we just didn't have the staff. Gets into the cadets. We were only at half staff, and the weather that came in early in the season, whatever, so we had more riptides and things like that overall. So the lifeguards really needed to concentrate on the ocean versus to be getting down and walking. So that's where the ambassadors really would come out and help.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. All right, the 911 Communication Center. Our 911 Center is the primary public safety answering point for the, Okay, thank you. Our 911 Center is the primary public safety answering point for the 26-mile jurisdiction of the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company and 1 square mile Rehoboth Beach Police Department. We're one of 8 PSAPs here in Delaware, and we're the only center that dispatches police, cadets, fire, EMS, and we maintain a lobby window. So we're the only ones in the state of Delaware that does this. And we're able to accommodate special requests for dispatches and to provide faster responses for us having this for the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company. And we got accreditation that we spoke about in past years that we continue with. Staff in the organization, quite honestly, we haven't had a supervisor in there for over 18 months, so I've been running the department and making sure the scheduling as well as other things are up and moving. However, staffing has reached a critical point. I think that's the biggest thing for you guys to know. We're approved for 12 positions. We have 8. We currently have 2 of which are looking to leave. One is to be a police officer. It looks like they're not going to make that, offer a conditional job offer within the next week or 2. Another one is looking to go to the state with victim services advocate. That's her true passion. And this is a nationwide thing. It's not just Rehoboth Beach. All PSAPs in Delaware are short, but it's a nationwide thing, and there's many different reasons for that. But centers just cannot hire enough people. It's compounded with low wages, high stress, increased overtime load, resulting in burnout. We are actually looking at right now, there's a lot of overtime being used because we're so short-staffed, but to keep us going, we may have to sit there and switch to 14-hour days or higher to sit there and just make what's going on to be able to keep things moving, and that adds a lot of stress and pressure on us. So again, we're at a true crisis at this point in that. Current projects, where recruitment and retention is the biggest thing. Policy and procedure manual update for transition to Lexipol. Update on restructuring of the training program. Future projects, addition for a fourth dispatching console in the center, which we've got a price, that's gonna be in the budget, about $25,000. And that's more gonna be a console in the back to help us out with training, because we've never had the turnover and have the train that's gonna come in there. So we need to sit, only one being on console at a time. We need two to help out with that. And we can work with 911 monies to make that happen. And then mobile dispatching capability for special events and large incidents. So we're going to be looking at laptops through the state. We think we'll get funding for that to help out with these big special events that goes on through the department. Does anybody have any specific questions about the 911 center? Okay. The police department, we're very unique, and we are a very unique full-service police department. I got to keep getting that. Thank you, sir. We are a very unique full-service police department that has to function and operate like a much larger agency while operating with a smaller staffing and budget levels. The clearest ones I would sit there and compare us to is Ocean City, Maryland, and Dover, which have departments like 200 officers at a time. And the reason why I say that is we're not just coming year-round, but the special events that we have, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But our staffing, most of you guys already know, I'm approved for 19 police positions, 2 lieutenants and a chief. We currently have 17, which include the patrol officer on field training for 9 weeks. We are looking at sending 2 recruits to attend a 21-week police academy starting October 8th. So again, 21 weeks, and then they have another 9 weeks after they come out with field training. It's important to know, April 2025, I have 6 full-time officers that are eligible to retire, to leave here with the state pension. And it looks like 2 are a strong probability of leaving. The other ones will stay on. But because of what I just mentioned, it takes so long to get people hired, the recruiting process, and then to actually get into a training and then that. So we really almost have to start planning now. Now we're already a little bit behind. Seasonal cadet program, we're approved for 26. We only got 13, and that's only going to go down. It's just getting harder to do it because of wages as well as the housing issue that I've talked about before. Because during the training, you have 5 weeks they have to come in prior to the season, so they're renting hotel rooms just to get through the training that's mandated by the COPT, the state of Delaware. Because we run our own cadet housing program, a lot of times people say, well, are all officers sitting there inside? Well, what happens is you don't see them out on the street. Well, the officers are teaching, we're instructing the seasonal officers, again, for 5 weekends and put that together so they're inside actually giving the instructions, and they have to have specialized training to do that. So therefore, a lot of them are going away to attend training courses to keep up with that. And that's where a lot of these towns don't have to deal with it like we do. So, challenges for the cadet program, I already mentioned workforce housing, and during the second week of August, the cadets that are still in college return back to school, as I mentioned, for the lifeguards. Special units and assets, I thought this was important to hit because I'm not sure that we always understand everything we have. We have criminal investigations, 1 detective position. He's a certified voice stress analysis like a polygraph operator. School resource officer, which is an active shooter instructor. Then he goes out on patrol during the summer season. We have a drone unit. We have 4 officers that are licensed to do that, which we have thermal imaging where we can help out other departments in and the city with to manage any help that they need. Let me see. We have professional standards units that manages all records, preserving them in evidence, manages policies and procedures, conducts internal investigations in-house while assisting other agencies with major investigations. I have to tell you, I'm very proud of my department, even though we're small. Many outside agencies up and down the state ask us to sit there and do their review of use of force issues as well as their policies and all, because we are a leadership amongst our peers up and down the state, which I'm very proud of. So again, it takes away though, because a lot of times people want us to do their help out with their internal investigations that I'll get to later. So that's the professional standards. We're always updating our policies and procedures. Resistance and response, manage all resistance and response policies and procedures, conducts all resistance response investigations, review boards and analysis in-house, and accurately meet all statewide reporting requirements. Remember, with every one of our seasonal officers, they're held at the same responsibility as a full-time officer, not only their training, if they violate a policy, or even if they're doing something well and how to use the force has to be investigated, we have to look at that. We have to review every one of their body cameras and make sure they're loading everything in evidence. So that's a person that's all day, that's all they're doing is looking at video and uploading and getting things ready to, in case it has to go to the Attorney General's office for discovery for cases. And I'll say and make sure again that everybody's following the policies and procedures. We have public information officers. We have a quartermaster, our armorer section, which includes 2 firearms instructors, 2 taser instructors. Again, all have to go and get recertified. Baton, CPR instructors, ground fighting, handcuffing, OC spray instructors. Special programs, body-worn cameras. As I said, we collect and store and manage 46 body-worn cameras, all in-car cameras, 3 interview rooms, and make sure all the data gets over to the Attorney General's office. Property and evidence, we're recruiting year-round. For cadets, full-time hiring process include training cadets and FTO after they graduate from the academy, background investigations year-round, manage all the grants and audits out of our department upstairs, special events. This is one that we're really setting ourselves up for failure and have for a long time. This is a very busy and fluid job and task that requires, I believe this or not, 30 hours a week. So that doesn't leave much time to get other things done between details with presidential protection, special events with all the extra duty paid jobs, city events, farmers market, bandstand, to get all that advertised and make sure there's people to cover those shifts, OHS programs, and then it's the major events putting them together like 4th of July, Polar Bear Plunge, Sea Witch, things like that. That is just, one person could do that year-round in Rehoboth Beach. That is very, very unique that handles all that. Future projects, update the emergency operations plan. It was last updated in 2013. That is critical for us to be thinking about. Implementation of another assistant PIO. Contract negotiations for our full-time police officers. This last contract ends March 31st, 2025. So we will be looking at contract negotiations next year for that at some point. We're seeking DPAC accreditation to comply with the mandates and goals of seeking CALEA. So that's a state-mandated accreditation to make sure we're with the new laws that just passed this year to get done. And we've actually been working on that, and we're in pretty good shape. Make sure we meet the upcoming law. These programs require the use of management of Lexipol and a policy management system that I talked about earlier. We are looking at a staffing study at preliminary cursory of some of the ones we looked at, but I'll be trying to put that out in the budget and see if we can actually get a good one. They're saying for the things we're doing that we're really understaffed, so for future studies. Quite honestly, with that, I'm not trying to be the negative. I think everybody's doing it for over 30 years here. But if we don't do something soon, we're setting up ourselves for failure, and we are going to fail just with all the other things going on and the new mandates by the laws. And because we had the cadets, it's just added on. So, everything I've talked about, these programs, the one thing you haven't heard is patrol. And patrol has to be our main function of the law enforcement agency. And quite honestly, we're again setting ourselves up for failure. Upcoming budget, we're on task. No issues for this year that's jumped out at us. We are looking at 3 new patrol vehicles to put in the budget, and our maintenance contracts, because of all the different equipments and usage, things continue to rise each year. So that's something we're trying to keep an eye on, and if that goes up, I try to cut where I can in some other areas. I think this, as I said, I've gone very fast. I think city manager said at the very beginning, if you want some more questions or answered, you want more time, I would love to do that. Just run it by the city manager or assistant city manager, and we'll make sure that happens. Does anybody have any questions?
Can you advance the slide?
Right there. I'm failing at my task. They gave me 5 minutes. I went over. So, does anybody have any questions, concerns?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we get reimbursed for any of these special events?
Yes, and that's another reason we work well with Lynn, is we bill them for our special events. So yes, the officers are paid. It's just making sure it's a safe event and put things out there and make sure the paperwork is on. Same thing with the body protection. We get reimbursement for all those hours too. So sometimes it's kind of slow getting in. We do pay up front and get taxes taken out for the officers, but we eventually get most of the paid back. Yes, sir.
Thanks. Mayor, just a quick question, and sort of to your question earlier, it may not be appropriate for this setting, but what I hear in this presentation is a bit of stress. Is where we deal with that in the budget discussion? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, there's a couple things that, in conversations with Chief over the last several months I've had with him, he's in the process of developing a take-home policy for the police cars. He's got 3 new vehicles that are currently being upfitted right now because several of the vehicles out, on the road are it's not the miles, it's the amount of hours that are on those engines and those vehicles, because the second you turn it off, then you have to take 20 to 25 minutes to upload back with Delgis and different things. So those vehicles are constantly in motion, constantly idling. And then these events that Chief and his team handle on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's coming to the point to where Lynn and I are down every couple of days talking about special events. It's not that a number we can do, it's just there's not enough officers and hours that can handle these. And so one of the things that I have on several of my notes is additional authorizations for the police in the next budget cycle. And I would ask that you all to kind of consider those thought process. And Jean, 5 months in the seat now as the HR, 5 months, really kind of working as much magic as she can with recruitment of both the communications officers and police officers seasonal, and coming up with different, ideas to make sure we have those recruitment techniques out to where we can recruit the most talented. And coupled with your authorization to do that compensation and benefit study, I just think it's critical. We have to be a contender among those coastal communities and those larger cities to make sure we are the employer of choice for people for seeking employment. So that's really important from my perspective. And so with that one, I'll just turn it over to the Director of Public Works, Kevin Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. Talk a little bit about the overall department, and then we'll overall directorate, and then I'll talk about each individual department. You can kind of see our breakout there. We have basically 5 departments. It's really 5.5 because we also have the facility manager for this building, Luke. Doesn't really fall anywhere else, so we have kind of created one of his own. Roughly 70 employees, at the height of the summer. Various breakout of full-time, part-time, and seasonals. We have some part-times that work all year round, and then some that are concentrated on the summertime as well. Our overall 24 operating budget, right around $11 million. That includes the amount of the outfall loan that we've started to pay back. We pay twice a year. I think we have started paying that back. And then our capital budget, a little over $9 million, does not include the upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant, excuse me, that are ongoing now, that are being paid by the state revolving fund loan. So we don't pay that off. We don't start paying that off until after we finish the project, and then we start paying that. In our streets department, you can see our workforce there, about 38 folks in the height of the summer, working over 4 shifts and doing early morning, 3 to 7 kind of shift. They do the 7 to 2 kind of shift, or 7 to 3, and then they have a 2 o'clock to whenever, 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and then a weekend shift. So 4 shifts to make sure that we're picking up things that need to get picked up. Big thing, obviously, is trash. In the summertime, it's trash, and more trash. So that's really the focus of a lot of the guys' times. They're twice a week residential pickup for everybody, and then all the city cans throughout the downtown area, plus all the cans on the beach. So it really is a trashy way to spend our summer. But That's what they do. A couple trips up and down the boardwalk, picking up that. And then in the fall, we'll start picking up leaves all throughout town, as well as yard waste. And we do a special pickup, in the spring for a big bulk pickup stuff. We do not collect recycling. We contract that out. We do, however, operate the recycling center down at the Streets Yard Monday, Friday, and Saturdays. Also have a bulk yard waste pickup down there as well, same times. And then I mentioned leaves become the bane of our existence starting in the fall. Streets Department is also responsible for our stormwater inlets. We don't really have a stormwater department, so we split the tasks out. Kind of, above ground, it's a Streets Department role. If it's underground, then it's a wastewater department, because they have the equipment that can get in and clean out some of the things underground. Streets Department is also, responsible for any pothole patching that we need to do, emergency type stuff, any of the sidewalk work, whether it be the grinding program, select sidewalk replacements, and then a full-time boardwalk repair. So we've committed to maintaining the wood boardwalk, so we're replacing those boards throughout the year. Just wanted to also touch within the city limits, we have some roads or streets that are maintained by the state. So the Rehoboth Avenue from the Circle down to 2nd Street. We have State Road as it comes in off of Route 1 into the town. Bayard Avenue from the bridge into Rehoboth Avenue, and Columbia Avenue, and a little piece of Surf. But those are the main ones. So we have to work with DelDOT. They have different requirements than we do sometimes as to notifications and traffic control and those kind of things, but we work with them closely whenever there's something being done on those particular streets. Specifically with Rehoboth Avenue, they have a project coming up to resurface Rehoboth Avenue, so we're gonna fall in under their contract and do our 2 blocks at the same time they're doing their portion of Rehoboth Avenue. Streets Department, when they're not picking up trash and leaves and that kind of thing, they're also making benches. They make the lifeguard stands. They operate and maintain the dune crossing mats. And then when they don't have anything else to do, we put up Christmas lights starting in October. And I think the city manager already talked about the tech services, brought that under our control, mainly because, after the season, then Bill Maffei, the tech services head, then he can work on the signage and the striping and everything else that works out throughout the year, not related to parking. So we've kind of reworked that organization. Moving over to the water department, we're authorized 8 full-time employees. We've been operating at about 7 for almost a year now. We just haven't found the right person to bring on board to round out that team, although we have talked to quite a few folks, but just looking for the right person. We basically have 7 wells, and we operate the main treatment plant out at Lynch Well Complex. We also have a secondary treatment facility at Well 8, which does some treatment out there. We have 2 water towers, as you know. Have over 5,600 customers. So as you look down below, you can see we service more people out of our city than we do in town. So we get about 1/3 is in town, about 2/3 out of town, and we have a varying rate structure for all those different groups. The big thing with the water department is the change in regulations that have come down very recently. The one we most recently talked about was the cross-connection control program, so that's one. We have big changes in the lead and copper rule that go into effect the end of 2024. And then they're now starting to investigate the PFAS, the never-ending chemicals, right, that are in many, many water systems. So those things are keeping the guys working on the technical side of it to try to figure out what our next steps will be as those laws and programs come into effect.
Mayor, before you move on to wastewater, on the water, under the folks who use our services, you said 2/3 are out of town. And then you referenced varying rate structures for those. Is there any instance where our in-town residents are paying more than out-of-town residents?
The only one that it might be that way would be the Dewey what we sell to the county to provide to Dewey, because we just provide bulk water, so we don't have to distribute it. So there's no service lines, there's no water mains associated with that. So we have a separate agreement with the county. I think it was a five-year agreement we just signed a year or so ago that has the rates for them set based upon just providing the bulk water and not having to provide, service line work, main work, that kind of thing. And then in town, if that was 1X, then out of town is 2X, with the exception of Breezewood, because we took over some of their wells, so we have a separate agreement with Breezewood, as long as we're using some of the wells that are located there. And then again, Dewey has the kind of the bulk rate. So it keeps the folks downstairs, busy trying to figure out who gets charged what rates. But I think it's pretty well set up in Munis now, so it happens pretty easily.
Thank you.
Just one other question on the water department. The aquifers that we are using, do we monitor those on a frequency of if they're still producing enough water for us, or saltwater intrusion issues, or those types of things?
Both of those things, Commissioner, we do monitor. We have an annual well monitoring program for the specifically for the saltwater intrusion, and we also have another program based on our permit conditions with the state, is we have to monitor the well drawdown. Our aquifer is very, very good. It recharges very quickly. So far, so good. We don't have some of the problems that some others have based upon where our wells are.
Thank you.
Wastewater department, this is where a lot of our money goes, so we're going to spend 2 slides on the wastewater department. But they basically have 12 full-time equivalents or full-time employees. Our permitted capacity is 3.4 million gallons a day, and you can see our average is somewhere a little above 1 for the off-season, and then can get up to 2.25, in July and August. The big thing to know in our wastewater department is that we have an operating agreement with Sussex County. So basically, we have to reserve 42% of our capacity, design capacity. So 42% of that 3.4, we have to hold for the county. And then whenever there's a capital improvement required in here, then they pay their 42% of that capital improvement. When it comes time to pay for the operation of the plant itself, it's a separate agreement, and there they pay based upon their percentage of use. So when we say that we're reserving 42% of the capacity, and then they use 55% of what we're treating, the numbers can kind of be tricky. But it's 42% of the capacity based upon our agreement, and then they pay their percentage they used. They pay that toward our operations and maintenance. And again, like water, you can see we treat more outside the city than we do, of our own. So that helps pretty much with the operation and maintenance costs. And we have separate agreements with North Shores and a separate agreement with Henlopen Acres. Just wanted to touch a little bit on the upgrades down at the plant. You've been through 6-7 years of the phased upgrades to include the outfall. So we're down currently executing phase 3B, which is the dewatering phase. This is a critical one for us because when this is completed, the dewatering phase is completed, another portion of that agreement with Sussex County kicks in. And now when we do the dewatering, then they have to come pick up the sludge. They come pick it up, they haul it over to where they're going to then dry it and then dispose of it. So that's a big cost savings for us and them, because they're paying a share of it. But when 3B is finished, then we're going to provide the dewatered sludge for them to come get and haul away, as opposed to now, we're hauling it up to Sludge Field or over to one of their other treatment facilities to treat. And then we have one more to go, which will kick in probably in the fall or winter of 2024, which would be all the other things that haven't been taken care of to date.
Question, if I could, on the dewatering, when that's complete, does that mean we can get rid of the tankers and the lease for the land?
I think we'll always keep a tanker just so we have something that if in emergency we could haul.
Okay.
So I foresee keeping one. We will get out of the land application business, and then we'll work with the county. The county wants to keep that capability because they have it, You know, it's so hard to get that permitted now. So they'd hate to give it up, but we'll work with them and see if they want to take it over, or if we want to maintain it and they pay the fee or something. But, I mean, that's 50-some thousand a year for the renting that field. So we'll have to come to some agreement.
We will.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Next up is our Buildings and Grounds Department. In there, we have 3 full-time employees. That does include our facility manager here for the building, Luke, and then 4 part-time custodians that help take care of the convention center, you know, this building, City Hall, all of our other city-owned facilities like the chamber, the museum, lighthouse, visitor center, those kind of things. They also maintain the restrooms down on the boardwalk and at Grove Park, as well as the shower towers and water fountains on the boardwalk, those types of things. And finally, for us, the Fleet Services Department. This is fairly new. We hired Art a couple years ago, and now they have their own department this year. We broke them out from streets. Art is our department head, and then we have 2 mechanics working for him. And we maintain, you know, all the city vehicles and then the police vehicles, both lease and city-owned. So it's a pretty diverse fleet. And again, about 100 vehicles and equipment to include things like, you know, the sewer vac, the beach rake, trash trucks, dump trucks, backhoes, all those kind of crazy low-density things that are required to do what we do here in the city. And if there are no other questions, I'll turn it over to.
Just one other, if I may. The beach cleaning, the rake, that falls under your department also?
It does.
Okay. And also the boardwalk recycling, is that still in evaluation stage or?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, the evaluation is not going very well.
Thank you.
But it is, I always say it provides, if nothing else, another trash can and keeps it off the boardwalk. So if we get a little bit of recycling out of it, great. I think it sends the right message, and it's doing no harm. So we're able to manage it with the folks we have.
Thank you.
So next couple of slides, any questions? We'll hit each one of the departments without a formal briefing. 'Cause I really respect your time. We're approaching the, right around 42 minutes left, and I kind of wanted to be able to just answer any last quick questions before we turn to Bert. Come on up, Matt, you're good. And then finally, we'll turn it over to Alex, just from Alex Burns from Brockstead, Mandelis. Sorry, Baird, Mandelis, Brockstead, and Federico. I'm having a brain fart today on this one. So again, this building license department, this is one of the key hiring actions that we talked about, taking over as a director of planning and community development. As you can see from the structure, there's 7 employees up there, 2 inspectors, 2 code enforcement, 2 administration, and 1 permit technician. And they handle all permits, applications, licenses, inspections. What am I missing, Matt, on this one?
I guess applications as well for rental applications and the processing thereof. All your applications for the various boards, the various commissions, any code interpretations that we might have to make.
This is where we're currently using Strategic Services, and we brought them online to look at our processes. And we're halfway through, not even halfway through, probably about 40% to close approaching 50%. We're their assessment. They'll be back in October to do another formal briefing with the staff to look at certain aspects of the workflows, permits, processing, and really kind of help us out with identifying that one. Very similar structure from our last community, brought on a consultant such as this and really streamline and help the staff understand what it is that are required and the process associated with it. And then also, ultimately, we were able to make that whole process digital and got rid of a lot of the paper and streamline the process in the process. Any questions or comments for Matt? We will get you're off the hook. All right, and we'll bring out Max real quick just for any questions or comments. He is a leader of a 3-person show up there on the second floor. And as you recall, the IT department is in the process of being a formal build-out on the third floor, and I think that's going to be a purpose-driven build-out, and that'll be one of the two elements on the third floor that's being completed. Kevin's facility manager, Luke Vinicola, is really leading that project and doing a fantastic job at it, really saving the city a lot of money. But that'll be a purpose area for IT as we move them upstairs and be able to build out and stretch out building and licensing, because to be honest with you, they're really on top of each other back in there. Multiple people back in the same office, and that will give them the operational room to spread out. So having IT straight upstairs, very close proximity to the server room, there'll be a good feel up there. You want to any talking points you want to highlight?
Other than what I have here, we're pretty much, if you can plug it in, we're in charge of it. So, we spend a lot of time supporting everyone else, and that takes a priority to keep the business running. So everything else is kind of, we slide in where we can, so.
Just under current issues of staffing, could you kind of just highlight, is that quality, number?
I think that's probably a number.
Okay.
I have some senior staff that are, looking at retirement age. So certainly bringing someone in, I think, based on some of the policies we're implementing, we may need more coverage, certainly in after hours. So there are things that are afoot, growth, that will probably cause us to need more employees. It's tough to replace somebody who's been here for 8 years and help put most of this in place. So it may take one or more people to, replace them.
There were preliminary discussions with Max as he really focused on succession planning and how do you look at that one? And I think he's done a good job with identifying that one employee and what it's going to take to replace them. The overlap process, I think, is critical. Bringing someone on board a little early, make sure that training, that succession planning is done before the incumbent rides off into the sunset. So Max is tracking that one, and I think he's got a good plan, preliminary in place. So thanks, Max. And then the newest department for the city, Human Resources, you're coming up on 6 months now, I think. Coming up on 6 months. So really, this is one of the first major moves that we did, which was really kind of identify a human resources individual. And as you know, Jean, she'll be just finished off her last classes for her master's in human resources, and she's awaiting her certificate or her diploma. And then her next big task ahead will be that SHRM accreditation that she's been keeping our eye on and looking at for the springtime. And if you look at the slide, you know human resources just as well as we all do. I think the major components that we're really focused on is recruitment and retention. We have a performance management system in place. Learning and development is huge in my book. I mean, professional development of a staff is critical because you have to make sure that they are poised and ready to handle the next issues at hand. And as you know, succession plan was one of the major components you tasked me with upon hiring. And I think we're looking at in several components across the city. One of her big things that she's working on right now, how big is the employee handbook?
Oh, gosh, it's nowhere near done, but the table of contents is 3.5 pages.
Yeah. So, 40 plus pages at current length, and that will grow. And it really, you have the code and you all tell us what to do. You will provide insurance to employees. The job that she's putting together is all of the each's and O's. Here's all the specifics, and that will really help the employees understand those benefits, those requirements, policies and procedures for the city staff. And I think she's doing a great job of that one. Again, constraints, 5 months into the job, but she's killing it already. Any comments for Jean or the HR side?
I'm sorry, question. The performance management, are we looking at cost of living increases or merit increases or both, or how is that going to be approached?
So we're looking at a bunch of different stuff in our comp and benefit study for COLA. So part of what we're doing with salary.com is we're getting a lot of tools that we'll have access to all the time, not just during our study. So those things will include COLA increases, how we could do merit increases, and there's also some tools once we get our comp and benefits study that we can use to build out how you advance in your job. You know, how do you go from being the new guy to, you know, getting raises and all that? And there's some tools in the salary.com stuff that we can use. It's not going to be immediate. Those are things, you know, steps to getting there, but we're working on getting a full package of making it, everybody can see what they need to do, places to put goals, really putting it back in the employees' hands of knowing what they need to do and how they can get there if they want to, you know, keep moving forward, so.
Pending any questions, we'll keep moving on. I want to be respectful of your time. And City Secretary, those are the major services, and I think most of you understand what Ann does on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, until you write it all down, on that left side, there's a veritable cornucopia of items that Ann is responsible for. She currently has a part-timer that's working with Ann. It really helps her out with a lot of the filing, and she's going through years. If you want to touch on anything, Ann, any more on that one?
Currently, we started out with 2019 to bring the books up to date. We're up to 2022. And the last set of books that we have to work on are the Planning Commission books, and then they'll be up to date. Then what I'd like to do is to pursue going into any of the agendas, the minutes, the resolutions, and the ordinances prior to 2005 when I started, and put those into the document center on the portal. That way everybody has access to them.
So a lot of administrative heavy lifts going on. While this part-timer is working with the city and working with Ann, Gene is currently working to, as you recall, you authorized an additional authorization for the city secretary's office in the last budget cycle to bring on an assistant for Ann full-time. That individual didn't work out. She left of her own accord after just a few short weeks. But we're looking how for the recruitments out of the house, how can we get that new person on board at when Ann is ready to bring them on and to be poised to take away some of this lift that you see there, because that is a lot of meetings for one individual over the course of just, weeks. So any questions or comments about this, we will move on to our Director of Finance, Bert Dukes.
We have a small department, 6 people, and it's been that way for many years. And I think we're adequately staffed, and I don't anticipate hiring in the near future. I think we've got it covered. The software has helped tremendously, and we're doing fine on the staffing side. The services we provide are annual budget. We work with the city manager and the assistant city manager, public works director, preparation of the budget. We start that process in November, and we have our first budget meeting in January. The other thing, we have budget reporting. Basically, it's a status report throughout the year that we prepare and distribute. And last of all, and the least fun, is the audit. The outside auditors arrive in June. And the good news is our audit has been completed. We should be getting our report in a few weeks. And results are very favorable for this year. They won't be as favorable in the FY24 year. Just our revenues essentially are stable, and our parking revenue came in slightly over budget. Our transfer tax was budgeted at a low level of basically $100,000 a month, and we're going to probably meet that annual budget sometime in November. So that's good. So we don't really have any major revenue shortages. And the other functions that we perform, all your water, sewer, trash billings, tax billing, And we have general service billings, which are just basically one-time bills that we would send to an individual for a service that's provided. Accounts receivable, accounts payable. Donna Moore has been with the city over 40 years. She not only handles the water sewer billing, but she also has the election process, and that's probably the least favorite part of her job because it can be challenging as far as people questioning their eligibility to vote. Opportunities, well, you might call it an opportunity. Much of our revenue is received from fees and services that we provide. Our percentage of revenue from property taxes is very low compared to the average city around the country. So these services, parking being the major contributor, really reduce the tax burden. At the same time, though, it exposes you to a degree of risk, because if you do have a bad season, or we had any kind of storm damage or anything that disrupted that stream of revenue, we've got a problem. The good news is our tax rates are so low that we could possibly consider a surtax or whatever. There is an opportunity. We're not overtaxed. Talk about some of the major initiatives. Interest rates started rising in really last January. You really started seeing them go up. Treasury bills, 90-day Treasury bills over 5%. So we started investing in Treasury bills in late December, and we budgeted $644,000. We'll probably get over $1 million this year. We budgeted that number conservatively because we didn't know when the rates were going to change, but that's an extra $1 million that we didn't have before. As far as recognition, we started, and Sharon Lynn was a big supporter of the GFOA budget awards. So we've received that for the last 2 years. We're hoping to receive it shortly, but keep my fingers crossed on that. I think we will. The last thing is our debt refinancing. We got just under the wire on our debt refinancing because we were able to obtain 1.6% interest rate on about $17 million worth of debt. And at that point, just about the time we wrapped it up, the rates started rising. So the 1.6% is at the same maturity that we had before, but it saved us on a present value basis. It saved us over $1.7 million, but we were just lucky, and so that's about all I have. Is there any questions or clarifications? If I will say one thing, if anybody wants to discuss finance, which is something I like to discuss, and probably most people don't, but I'm happy to meet with anybody if they want to, come in for a half hour, an hour, whatever they want. I can talk about our audit and government accounting. If you've been in the private sector for your career, it is a little different. I mean, the financial statements look entirely different. It's a whole different setup, but essentially it's still the same thing. It's just that we have a different purpose in government. So, can I answer any questions?
I have one, sorry. Do you see what impact, or if any impact, the county reassessment would have on the city?
I can't predict what's going to happen on that. I just don't know. I mean, of course, we have, I don't know how the commissioners are going to go as far as the assessment, whether the county's going to have their assessment, and I guess whether the city is going to work with the county, or I don't know what your plans are. I kind of have to throw it back to you folks to see how we're going to do it. But I think, generally speaking, the last assessment that we had, which was a few years ago, and the one before that was about 45 or 50 years ago. But it was really to shift the tax burden, not raise additional revenue. I mean, the intention initially was, we were actually revenue neutral, and then we did have a 50% tax increase several years later. But I mean, I think the initial goal was to shift the burden, because it really wasn't fair. You had people who had homes in the Ocean Block that hadn't, the property hadn't changed in many years, and they were paying less than somebody living in Country Club Estates. So now I think we did correct that. So I'm sure this new assessment will probably do some shifting too. And whether we raise additional revenue, that'll be up to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bert.
Now we've got the alderman. We have our alderman in court through any of your questions. But as you know, she has a part-time assistant, Kathleen, and it's really a force multiplier having the alderman here within City Hall and also within the city. It allows us to adjudicate a lot of things that normally would be going out, out to the county or the state. It also helps us, as Renee has identified, key components that we want to probably take in-house to make sure those court cases or those courts or actions are handled right here in our alderman court. So those actions are also being worked simultaneously. I know Chief is working with the alderman, and we're also working with the solicitor as well to kind of capture those and present those at a future meeting for you all to look at. So, any questions or comments that we want to take on for? And we'll move right along to Communications Department. Lynn just had a nice meeting or a nice small presentation at one of the last ones, even though she was absent at her 3CMA conference. Really touched on media relations and really the platforms and the various viewership of each one of those. I guess the two areas that I kind of want to highlight specifically is really Reach Out Rehoboth. I think it was a fabulous launch. I really think that's going to be another force multiplier for you all, as well as the staff. Really communicate with the residents, identify who our target audiences are, and really get that feedback back. With the second one being that new city website. We're probably 75% of the way through looking at those various demonstrations of those companies. We've got a couple of great contenders, and both of them I think would fit the city's bill as we're moving forward. But we'll keeping our minds clear and our opinions to ourselves until we really kind of look at the pros and cons of each one of those. And Lynn is really doing a great job of capturing what it is we're looking for. What problem are we trying to solve here? What metrics are we trying to compare each one of them against? And so I think that's a good one of the things that a special request, looking at those, if there's a media relations or a media inquiry, if we could route those through Lynch, that way she can make sure she can capture those and see that we're not double tapping things. Same thing, we had a highlight point when the drowning occurred. Lynn went into support mode, such as myself, with Lieutenant Riddle and Chief really taking the lead on that one. And we had numerous media outlets asking for comment or confirmation or things of that nature, when really we had to go silent because we needed to get next of kin notification before we did any press release or anything like that one. Even though we knew we had to be quiet and we had to kind of be respectful of that family. And so that's why it helps with Jamie and it helps with Lynn if they're like the center points and going back out. But do you have anything else on that one, Lynn? Okay. Do you want to take this one real quick? Because I think this is mainly your bailiwick.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public, and city staff. Just a quick overview of the parking department. I'll be brief. I think most of you know how parking works in the city. So June Embert is here with us today. She's our parking supervisor. We also have Frank Lloyd over there, who's the assistant parking supervisor. They are both full-time. We also hire seasonal staff, upwards of 35 seasonal staff, and they include positions such as office clerks, the enforcement officers, our meter technicians. We talked a little bit about this before, how the technicians have been moved under the streets department, but during the summer, the technicians are dispatched out of the parking department from those office clerks. We also have permit sales, so we operate 2 kiosk locations, one on Bayard Avenue and one on Rehoboth Avenue, as well as we sell permits out of the parking department. And then we also have 2 attendants that work the Deauville Beach lot down there selling permits. Major services we provide, again, permit sales, we provide information, we answer questions, we respond to complaints about parking. We also handle the bus parking here in the convention center. There's 2 bus parking spots there, so we coordinate a lot with groups that are looking to come in. They want to park there during the day, or maybe they want to stay overnight. And we also work with the police department as well, certainly with the president in town. Sometimes those spaces are occupied. We also perform meter maintenance. Again, that falls to the technicians. That's everything from responding directly to some of the complaints from people or concerns from people who are in town. They're having trouble using their credit card, or they're using coins incorrectly. And then again, just upkeep in terms of collecting the coins out of the meters and then replacing paper, et cetera. One important thing is the major projects initiative. So this has been roughly a 4-year project in the making. That's in the past, the multi-space meters and LPR. So we underwent a major project years ago, and that was transitioning away from single-space meters and multi-space meters to truly multi-space meters citywide. Currently, we have 200 multi-space meters in the metered areas, and they're all enforced by license plate recognition. Through this process, we've also done a lot of consolidation, and we focus a lot on the efficiency of our operations. So now where we are is sort of looking internally on creating more efficiencies within the current operations. So for example, prior to the multi-space meter replacements we did on Rehoboth Avenue, we had over 90 park mobile zones. So it was very difficult for somebody to pay the wrong zone and create a citation, and it's more people coming to the parking department to complain about that citation. So we had over 90 park mobile zones on Rehoboth Avenue. We now currently today have 12 park mobile zones, and that is citywide. We have 4 park mobile zones on Rehoboth Avenue. So again, that speaks a little bit to the efficiencies that we've tried to create. That also translates to a better user experience, visitor experience when they come here. Less mistakes are made. Presently, one of the things that we focused on this year was training. So now the chief of police has direct oversight for some of the training requirements for the staff over there. That allows them to run vehicle owner information and then do data entry. So they can take that vehicle owner information, put it into the software, and then that allows for things like triggering letters that go out if citations are not paid and balances escalate. And then in the future, this has been a project that for those who have been on the commission for a while, you've seen it in the capital improvement plan for a while, that is virtual parking permits. This program is utilized successfully and heavily at colleges and universities. We're still trying to figure out how best to use this program in a seasonal community where visitors fluctuate, and we've got different types of visitors, those that plan their vacation a year in advance versus those who might just make the decision that day to come down. But occasionally we do get calls and questions about, can I purchase my parking permit online? And our response is, we hope to be able to do that one day. So certainly there's some nuances in the city code in terms of who gets free parking permits and some of the requirements that are needed to be submitted to us to issue those free permits. So that's a program that we look to implement in the future once we think we can do it successfully. And then finally, I talk about opportunities. I don't like the word issues, so I use opportunities. That's opportunities for improvements. Again, focusing on sort of the maintenance of the department. Again, trying to clean up processes, procedures on how to handle complaints and also citation disputes. And then again, just the efficiency in all aspects of the parking services that we provide. We've provided a couple photos there for you of the seasonal staff. There's a picture in the center there of Bob with a shoe fly pie that somebody brought into him from Pennsylvania. A couple dogs that visited one of our permit sales out on Bayard Avenue, and then that's a picture of Bill Maffei on the right. He's our parking, the technical services supervisor who Kevin had referenced earlier, and on the left is Ron Snoots, one of our seasonal employees. That is with the last single head meter pole before it was removed, so it was a landmark photo opportunity for sure. So that's all I have. I can answer any questions that you might have.
Evan, is there a relationship between the number of zones, you went down the 12 park mobile zone, and the fees that we charge? In other words, right now, we have a $3 fee citywide.
Yes.
If we went to different fees, different areas, does that affect the zones?
Yeah, so that does relate back to one of the questions that I know I have received in the past, and that question, I guess, is why do we have the number of zones that we have? We had more than 12 Park Mobile zones that we currently have when we did have the varying rates. So if we do establish a varying rate structure, we do need to have different Park Mobile zones. That translates not only with the Park Mobile zones, but also with the meters themselves and our LPR system. So that's why we like to start talking about parking changes early in the season, because it's a lot for us to develop the zone structure, the rate structure, and then configure it appropriately. Not only configure the meters appropriately, communicate that with Park Mobile, but then we have to communicate it. So we have to update signage, we have to update the parking walking guide, we have to update the website, et cetera. So currently, the 12 Park Mobile zones, there is really no difference between those zones aside from their different zone numbers. But if we were to change rate structure or even time limits, some of you will recall we had a 3-hour time limit a while back. Those all require a different Park Mobile zone. So,
Thank you. Anybody else?
So real quickly, Liz Lingo could not be here with us today. She's had the day off real quick, but her department, obviously, she has one full-time, her one seasonal, Director of Recreation, Tim Banforth, and one part-time laborer, Mike Peterson. She's worked for 5 years. She's got some major projects, major services as provided. And if there are any other questions, I will, pending any questions, I'll turn this over to Alex Burns, Associate Attorney from Baird, Mandalis, Brockstead, and Federico. I'm going to get it right sooner or later.
Thank you, Loris, for the introduction. And the name keeps changing, so I don't even try to remember it. Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public, it's a pleasure to be here. Glenn's not able to be here today. He had a prior engagement scheduled months ago, so he was not able to make it. I'll try to be brief. I know I'm standing between everyone and what's turning into a nice day out there. I gave a presentation on ethics to Georgetown last week, and I thought it was an abbreviated presentation, and it was over an hour. So I'll try to get through as much as I can here. So this presentation is about the Freedom of Information Act. All 50 states and the federal government have sunshine laws that essentially allows the public to be involved in what's going on. There's two basic components of FOIA: open meetings and open records. And it's trickier than it might appear to comply. I think it's a relatively demanding statute to comply with. So the goal is hopefully to provide some information that can prevent some inadvertent FOIA violations. And the Delaware Supreme Court, I thought, put a nice bow on what FOIA is. Delaware Supreme Court, in discussing FOIA, said that the purpose is about allowing, is that the government shouldn't be the only body that decides what information the public gets to review. So here's the policy right from the statute. The underlined language is key, that citizens shall have the opportunity to observe the performance of public officials and to monitor the decisions that are made by such officials. And so the commissioners are clearly a public body, but public bodies is a very broad term. It can be a subcommittee that's tasked with making recommendations. That can be a public body and be subject to FOIA. As you can see in that second bullet, I just want to touch on that just to show you how broad public bodies are. Any regulatory, administrative, advisory, executive, appointive, or legislative body of any political subdivision. This is a political subdivision. So that's quite a broad stroke. And I think it might be helpful if I just touch on a recent FOIA opinion regarding the city of Rehoboth. Luckily, there was no FOIA violation here. And it just stands for the concept that administrative city meetings are not subject to FOIA. So the city manager met with a planning commission applicant and there were 2 city commissioners there, and that was not a FOIA violation because there was not a quorum present of the city commissioners. So this just goes on to say what public bodies are, supported by public funds. Being supported by public funds alone is not enough to be a public body. For example, entity that contracts with the government isn't subject to FOIA just because they are receiving public funds. So the quorum concept is interesting because in general, for there to be a public meeting, there needs to be a quorum of members of a public body. And for purposes of FOIA, that's a majority. So for the commissioners, that would be 4 out of 7. That just depends on the public body. But just wanted to touch on a recent opinion from the Attorney General, if I can find it. Here it is. So this is Town of Georgetown, a 2021 Attorney General opinion, and they accidentally violated FOIA without a quorum. What they did was what's called a serial meeting. Essentially, there was an email chain, and individuals were replying all. And the Attorney General said that was a FOIA violation because, let me find the exact quote here. This vote by a series of emails and calls supplanted a meeting in which council could consider and vote on whether to designate Juneteenth as a holiday. So this was about whether they were going to recognize a holiday, and instead of calling a meeting, they had an email conversation about it, and that was a public meeting. So it can be tricky to comply with this. So a public meeting, first piece of it is a quorum. The rest of it is purpose of discussing or taking action on public business. So as you know, you don't need to take action for it to be public business because there's workshops where that's public business is happening. But public business is very broadly construed by the Attorney General. Anything that the city has jurisdiction over or even advisory jurisdiction. So something as general as talking about permits of compliance, that could be public business. This meeting in itself could be public business. And so, as I'm thinking about it, probably should offer opportunity for public comment at the end, because someone could argue that this is a public meeting, because there's a quorum. So yeah, and when in doubt, just consider it to be a public meeting. I don't really need to talk about the virtual option there. Because of the city policy, we have in-person meetings. I'm trying to go quickly through this. So I just wanted to point out that FOIA doesn't prohibit you from gathering in a quorum outside of the city business. For example, there's been cases where a quorum goes to a restaurant, or you can go to a cocktail party, and as long as you're not talking about public business, there's no FOIA violation. So, you know, meeting outside of City Hall is fine. Just try not to speak about public business. And if someone starts talking about public business, you should say, hey, I can't talk about this, unless it's a meeting. So this has an X through it because up until last year, public comment was not required by FOIA. And that changed during the pandemic. Public comment is now required by FOIA. And the key word there is comment. It's not requiring a conversation, so you do not have to respond to public comment. And when you do respond, I would recommend being careful because it could be the case that responding to public comment, you deviate from the agenda. You know, if it's a planning commission meeting and someone starts talking about ice cream at the microphone, and then you start talking about ice cream, that's not on the agenda. So just be careful about public comment. There at the bottom, B, public body may impose reasonable time, place, manner restrictions on public comment. That comes from constitutional First Amendment law. So that just means you can put content neutral restrictions. You can restrict where on the agenda the public comment goes, but you can't restrict what is said. Public hearings versus public meetings. So every meeting is a public meeting except for some exceptions, like executive sessions. But public hearings happen when there is a requirement, sometimes it's in the code, sometimes it's constitutional law, for a person's liberty or property interests, such as zoning code amendments. There was a public hearing at the last commissioners meeting. Major subdivision approvals require a public hearing, but they can be thought of as a more formal time for taking public comment. There's actually a record being built and evidence being heard, and there's can be witnesses. So there is a slight distinction between the two. This is a difficult one to comply with and does a great job. You have the post notices of meetings 7 days in advance, which is actually pretty difficult to comply with. You know, sometimes it might feel like government's moving slow, but if they plan everything 7 days in advance, you know, if I had to plan what I was doing in 7 days, it would be difficult. So I have read opinions from the Attorney General that has given a little bit of leniency on this one. Sussex County posted their agenda at 5:35 after business hours. Someone took issue with that, said it wasn't 7 days notice. The Attorney General said it was. That was close enough. But I imagine if there was a case where the agenda was posted at 11 p.m., it might be different. And then agenda specificity, sorry. So the statute requires a general statement of what's on the agenda, but if it's possible to be more detailed, it should be more detailed. For example, if the agenda item is consider and possible vote on a nomination, but everyone knows who the nominee is, their name should be on there according to the Attorney General. Notice, Ann does a great job at this. It's actually interesting. The public notice isn't required to be on the website, but Rehoboth always does that. I know some municipalities just put it in town hall. So another thing Ann does a great job at is having detailed minutes, but the legal requirements for what's in the minutes are actually quite minimal. Simply who was present on the public body and each vote that was taken and action agreed upon. And for this reason, you can't do secret ballots. You can't write down who you're voting for or how you're voting and then just say, it's 3-2 or however it may be, because that would violate the minutes requirement that the minutes have to reflect how everyone voted. Okay, I'll quickly touch on executive session. So the Attorney General construes executive sessions very narrowly. So generally, if it's something that can be discussed in a public meeting, it should be. It doesn't belong in an executive session just because it's something that is sensitive or controversial or embarrassing. There are only a few specific things that can be discussed in executive session. Litigation is a big one. Real estate, purchase and sale, real estate, and personnel matters, including employee discipline, which, except for if the employee asks for it to be public, it has to be public, which I have never run into, but that's interesting to me. The litigation exception for executive session, it can't be a hypothetical. It can't be someone like Glenn or myself saying, oh, there's legal risk to this ordinance. There has to be a tangible threat according to the Attorney General. And so that depends on the specific facts, but someone retaining counsel and sending a demand letter to the city saying we're going to sue you, that is enough to be a threat of litigation. But it can't just be we need to have a legal litigation executive session because there's some risk here. Public records, I would generally assume everything is a public record. There's very few things that are not public records. Found a FOIA opinion on Newcastle County recently. This is 2019. Someone wanted access to the 911 system. They wanted to understand how it worked, and The county said, no, we're not giving you that. There's a threat to public safety to give access to the 911 system, and the Attorney General said that's perfectly fine. So that's the kind of thing that might not be a public record, something specifically that could be a threat to public safety. There's a list of things that are not public records, but just presume that all your emails, recordings, all that's public records. And it might be easier to be, as a best practice, just use a city email account for everything that's public business, just so your private materials are separate, don't have to search through all that stuff. That would just make it easier, I think. So yep, every public body has a FOIA coordinator. That's Ann here. And I don't want to go too long, I'm at 3:02. Oh, I should probably wrap it up. Yeah, absolutely. So FOIA coordinator, that's Ann, and she is the conduit between FOIA requestees, and she helps gather FOIA materials. She might contact you and ask you for emails about some specific topic that's being requested. So ethics, there's the state code of conduct, also in Title 29. And that code of conduct does allow municipalities to develop their own code of conduct. Rehoboth has elected to opt into the state code of conduct, so that's in Chapter 27 of the city code. It states that the city is opting in to the state code of conduct. And this is also a state code, but I would point out that unlike FOIA, there can be criminal charges associated with the state code of conduct if you violate that. Not implying that anyone would, I'm just wanted to point that out. So a big concept of the code of conduct is conflicts of interest. And you don't have to have a pure conflict of interest. The mere appearance of a conflict of interest can be enough. So when in doubt, you can recuse yourself. Best practice would be to leave the room. And you don't even have to explain why you're recusing. You can just say, I'm recusing from this and leaving the room. Glenn has told me about situations where people say, I'm recusing for this reason, and this is why this application's garbage, and it kind of, taints the whole thing before they step out of it. So you don't have to say anything, just say, you're welcome to say, this is a relative or something like that, but that's why I'm recusing, but you don't have to. So this is just talks about what impairs your judgment. It's pretty straightforward if you have a close relative involved or financial benefit or detriment. I know you all know this stuff. I guess I have a few minutes left. I just want to touch on gifts, accepting gifts. If it's over $250, you can disclose it to the Public Integrity Commission. I'd recommend doing that. And I've read some case law on that, and if it's a charitable gift, it's still the value of the charitable donation. So for example, if it's a $1,000 charitable ticket to a party or something, and the chicken dinner is only $20 that you ate at that charity, it's still a $1,000 gift, according to the Attorney General. It doesn't count what the actual value is, it's the charitable donations included in that value. So just also know that the code of conduct is stricter when you're acting in a quasi-judicial capacity. Approving something is, like, for example, an appeal from the Planning Commission. That would be higher stakes for ethics than a legislative capacity, like passing an ordinance. St. Lawrence, are they going to get a copy of this? Yes, they have. Okay, great. So I'm not going through all of it. I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to read this at your leisure. And this is just another thing I wanted to point out, that Delaware law doesn't prohibit officials from participating in processes. So for example, there's nothing preventing a city commissioner from going to the planning commission as a member of the public. But if you're taking a public position and then there's appeal from the planning commission, that could be problematic and lead to at least a perceived conflict. So you can still be a member of the public. You don't give that up by being a public servant. And that's about it. I went very quickly through it, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just like for you, how many typical days do we have to get a FOIA request back?
Generally, it's 15 working days, so 3 weeks. It can be extended for good cause, but yeah, 15 standard. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lawrence, since Alex made mention of the public, would you maybe allow some public?
Mayor, that's a great idea. I think it's perfect on this particular point in time. Would there be any members of the public wishing to make any comment? So if you can come up and state your name and affiliation to the city. And
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Thanks to the suit for letting me get up here. I have several points that I'd like to make. I'll put on my reading glasses here. First of all, is this material, I assume, is going to be online, the little booklet? Is that going to be online? Yeah, we'll place it online. Okay, thank you. And then, let's see. So I really think that this meeting is of such significance and importance. I mean, it may be one of the most important meetings I've ever seen in the city. So having said that, I think credit should go to the people that put this thing together. I think it's very important. Okay, and your staff, oh my gosh. I've dealt with these people. Well, first of all, for you new kids on the block, I'm a property owner since the mid-'70s. I've lived here year-round since '99. So I know some of these guys pretty well. And it's an outstanding staff. I mean, it's worth noting. Police department, are we getting compensation for the presidential protection that you guys provide?
Yes, sir. We work with
Chief?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Just leave it on.
There's a couple of issues that are coming out of these conversations that I think are worth noting as a comment. One is workforce housing. I think the city really needs to do some in-depth study of that matter, and I think they ought to be finding some ways to solve it. And there was an article in the paper a few weeks ago about police staffing, and it just occurred to me that one possible creative way to do that would be to reach out to property owners who may have properties that aren't maybe up for rent, but have facilities that would accommodate employees. And I was at that point thinking about the police department. So you get two benefits from that. The person's in town and the person's a protector that's in town. just as a thought. But I think some serious consideration has to be given to, putting up some buildings. I don't know where, in town, out of town, whatever, to accommodate these folks, because I think it's vital. And maybe you work with the chamber to get into that issue. All right, I'm almost done. I am done. One last point I think is important. Sorry to see the city manager go. I think the position of a city manager is much like being a parent, and we do have a new dad on staff already, and I think you ought to be pushing to get whoever that might be on board here. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment for the training? That being said, apologies for going over a few minutes over. Commissioner Preston, if you want a follow-on class with either Alex or Glenn, please let us know, because I think that maybe we went through it rather quickly, but maybe this will get to digest, and if there are any follow-on questions, I think that would be very beneficial, because they are a wealth of information. So I appreciate any comments you have on that one. If there are any comments or suggestions on what you would like to see further, a future one of these as this progresses, we're willing to take notes right now.
Personally, I want to thank you for your time and the time for the staff. The staff is just an incredible resource here at the city, always has been and always will be. And it's a very great honor to work for this city in the highly paid position that we are. But again, just the compliments to the staff and what the work they do and the commitment that they have. The longevity of the staff means so much to make us proud to represent what the city is and who we are. And I do feel that this meeting is one of the first ones that we've had like this, but I think that it's very beneficial not only for us, but hopefully to the staff themselves, because we all get guilty of, if you will, being siloed and focusing on our own department and running it well, but don't realize what else goes on in the city. So hopefully this was as beneficial to staff members as it was to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, I would also say that this was incredibly helpful. It's very informative. And I would encourage our newly elected commissioner to, if you've not already, get in a truck with Kevin, ride around, smell the wastewater treatment plant, look at the facilities, because that was one of the most helpful things I ever did after becoming an elected official. So when we're looking at capital improvement plans and, oh my God, why do we need to spend $800,000 on that? Kevin will remind you, remember that, your foot almost fell through that thing? That's why. So I would just encourage you to do that if you have not already.
Thank you. I haven't done it with Kevin, but I did do it with Lawrence and the other day. So not quite the extent of what you just suggested, but we did do it. So Kevin, maybe you and I have a date in the future.
Lawrence, thank you very much, and thanks to your staff. Very much appreciated. And I think this likely will be the foundation for next year's orientation.
Just one closing comment, if I may. In looking and hearing your reports about one of the challenges that we face as staffing, and thinking about this, we talked about our capital improvement programs and what have you, and that always deals with stuff, if you will. But I am very much interested in looking at the next budget cycle of, I don't know the proper way to do this, but if you will, creating a CIP for staff, for succession planning, for growth, because it is as imperative to me that you have the stuff in the CIP, but you also have the people to run it, operate it, manage it, and that comes before stuff. And I really want to look at, in the next budget cycle, of trying to prepare for the next 3 to 5 years, 10 years, as we do with CIP. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's an absolute great comment. A project is only good as the champion and the leader behind it. And it just can't get accomplished if you don't have that depth on the bench. So I completely agree. Pending any other questions, comments? I want to say thank you so much for the staff. They really worked hard on this one. I really appreciate all their hard work on this one. And thank you all for indulging this one. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.